Okay, so when I started researching this video, I was thinking like Gorillaz, KDA, aespa, you know? Then Alvin and the fucking Chipmunks came up. So I have to talk about them and the Chipettes, I guess? Alright, if you know me at all, you know I love animation, and like most people, I enjoy music. So animated bands are like the best blend of both worlds. I only know and enjoy like 3-ish of the bands I'm going to discuss, but I think this video is going to be super interesting. Probably going to get copyright claimed again, but I do these for fun, so who cares? Alright, so the definition of animated band that I'm going for with this video is a music group that has some animated version of its members. A lot of these bands have had media made with live action versions, but most have origins in animation. There are like 2 phases to the animated band phenomenon that I can see. So from the late 1950s to about 1985, old school cartoons had the monopoly on animated bands, and it was mostly for kids' shows. After that, the media got more diverse, with animated bands created just for their own sake, video game marketing, K-pop groups, etc. So I'm just gonna kind of go chronological by start date and go through these groups so that we can see the evolution of this really cool concept. Mind you, most of these bands overlap what years they are active, so time will be a little wonky, but I'll do my best to make it cohesive. Also, I'm going to focus on the Western, meaning American and European, development of animated bands because I don't want this video to be too long, and I feel like Eastern animated bands deserve their own videos, but I include a couple just for like context. So, as I teased at the beginning, Alvin and the Chipmunks is actually a really important part of the history of animated bands. They kicked it off as the first ever virtual band in 1958. The reason that we have been plagued with high-pitched covers of pop songs is this guy named Ross Bagdasarian Sr., stage name Dave Seville. The story goes that in 1958 he was living that starving artist life and struggling to produce a hit song. So he spent $190 of his last $200 on a tape recorder to speed up his voice. The song that came from these efforts was called Witch Doctor, and it had a high-pitched chorus and became the hit that Ross needed. You'll probably recognize it, especially if you've done vocal exercises in a glee club or something.
I told the witch doctor I was in love with you, and then the witch doctor, he told me what to do. He said that...
From this song, Ross got the inspo for the song that started it all, the Chipmunk song, Christmas Don't Be Late.
All right, you Chipmunks, ready to sing your song?
I'll say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, Simon?
Okay.
Okay, Theodore?
Okay.
Okay, Alvin? Alvin? Alvin!
Okay! Christmas, Christmas time is near.
This song would be released later that same year and birthed the Chipmunks. It would garner 3 Grammys, Best Comedy Performance, Best Engineered Record, Non-Classical, and Best Recording for Children. It also stayed #1 on Billboard's Hot 100 for 4 weeks. At first, the band was called David Seville and the Chipmunks, or just the Chipmunks. The eponymous Chipmunks were themselves named after 3 record execs from their original label, Liberty Records, the iconic Alvin, Theodore, and Simon. And this little fake band was poppin'. The GP was eating up these high-pitched voices, as they would for decades to come. It wouldn't be until 1961, though, that they were fully animated as a TV show. But they released music throughout that time, and the Chipmunks and Dave were depicted as cartoons. They would also appear in animated commercials. Then, Ross Bagdasarian Sr. unfortunately died in 1972, and so the Chipmunks would cease to pump out music until his son, Ross Bagdasarian Jr., revived the band in the early 1980s with his wife, Janice Carmen. That album was called Chipmunk Punk. They also brought back the TV show with Ross Jr. voicing Alvin, Simon, and David, and Janice voicing Theodore and the Chipettes. The show started in 1987 and ended in 1990. With Ross Jr. and Janice at the helm, the Chipmunks also got a few movies. The first one was in 1987 called The Chipmunk Adventure. Then, in 1996, Bagdasarian Productions and Universal signed a deal saying that the characters could appear in theme parks and other stuff. This was basically the beginning of the era of those chipmunk movies in the 2000s and 2010s, and the high-pitched covers of pop songs that you listened to so often if you had younger siblings.
If you like it, then you should've put a ring on it. If you like it, then you should've put a ring on it. Don't be mad once you see that he want it. If you like it, then you should've put a ring on it. Oh, 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 oh. Do I have a place where I can rest my weary bones? Do I my home?
I'm going to level with you. I think the movies are cute, but I would never listen to that music of my own volition because it gives me a headache. However, I respect the cultural impact that Alvin and the Chipmunks has had, and how it set the tone for some bands that I actually really like. Okay, I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of Alvin and the Chipmunks, at least if you live in the US, but I don't think you've heard of the Nutty Squirrels. As with any bad bitch, Alvin and the Chipmunks had its imitators, and the Nutty Squirrels definitely falls into that. They debuted in 1959, a year after Alvin and the Chipmunks first came on the scene. Jazz musicians Don Elliott and Granville Berland wanted to get in on the animated woodland creature band thing before Alvin got his show. The Nutty Squirrels were basically Alvin and the Chipmunks if they sang jazz.
Say something. You like jazz?
The Nutty Squirrels released their first song in 1959. It was called Uh-Oh, Part 1. This song peaked at number 45 on the Billboard Pop Singles chart. Later that same year, they released Uh-Oh, Part 2. This time they peaked at number 14. In September 1960, the Nutty Squirrels would get their own animated series, 1 year before Alvin. It only got one season. Their last album was released in 1964, and for the most part, the Nutty Squirrels have faded into obscurity. Maybe, old people know them, but they just didn't have the cultural sticking power of Alvin, Theodore, and Simon. Speaking of which, they did get a nod at the end of the 2007 Alvin and the Chipmunks movie when Ian Hawke tries to get 3 squirrels to sing. Next up, we have the Archies. They first appeared in comic form for the 60th issue of Life with Archie. Apparently, The Monkees, a sitcom about a fictional rock band, inspired the Archies. The band was also animated in the cartoon The Archie Show, which aired from 1968 to 1969. It was basically the comics brought to 2D life, and all the main characters, Archie, Betty, Veronica, Reggie, and Jughead, were in a band together. IRL, they were obviously real people who actually made the music. Don Kirshner, producer for the Monkees, assembled the studio musicians. In late 1967, he was hired as music supervisor for The Archie Show, which needed a new original song every week. Kirshner then tapped fellow producer Jeff Barry to help him out. Ron Dante, who was an experienced session singer, became the lead singer. Jeannie Thomas was hired as the female vocalist. The show was a success, as you can tell by Archie's enduring presence in our life. The first single from the Archies was Bang Shang-a-Lang.
My heart went bang shang-a-lang, bang shang-a-lang, bang shang-a-lang, bang bang.
That is a bop, in my humble opinion. It almost hit the top 20 in late 1968. Then, very quickly after, Barry hired Andy Kim as a songwriter and backing vocalist. Jeannie Thomas was also replaced by Tony Wine. It's now that we have probably the most famous song by the Archies, Sugar Sugar.
Sugar, oh honey, honey, you are my candy girl, and you got me wanting you.
Maybe I'm just out of touch or something, but I did not know that this song came from a cartoon fictional band. I mean, I heard it in B-Movie with the rest of America, but I never looked it up or whatever. The song would end up #1 on Billboard's year-end countdown in 1969. It wouldn't gain traction until it was re-released 2 months after its initial May release on Calendar/Kirshner Records. According to Andy Kim, stations wouldn't play the song at first, which, idiots. Once it did get radio play, the song was a powerhouse. Sugar Sugar would spend 22 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100 and 4 of those weeks in the #1 spot. The Archies were the first fictional band to hit #1. It would reach gold status, having sold nearly 1 million copies in just 1969. It would also go #1 in other places around the world like Belgium, South Africa, and the UK. Since then, other artists have covered it, including Queen, Tina Turner. The Archies would have a few more hits, but their success kind of dwindled. Their 1970 song, Who's Your Baby, was the last time they were in the top 40. Also, Donna Marie would replace Tony Wine that year. Then, Barry left in late 1970. Dante went on to do some solo projects and record production, and Kim got a solo hit with Rock Me Gently. Then, the last single was released in 1972, until 2008 when Dante would bring in Danielle Van Zyl and Kelly Lynn to sing for Betty and Veronica, and they released the Archies Christmas Party album on the Fuel 2000 label. Most recently, the Archies have popped back up on the CW camp masterpiece, Riverdale. In this case, they're obviously live action now, even though the characterizations are equally cartoonish. Also, KJ Apa is such a weirdo, but that's a topic for another day. I watched a clip of them performing, and I'm not gonna hold y'all. It's terrible, Your Honor. Absolute bottom of the barrel. We'll see if when I'm editing, if I decide to subject you to that, because it's just, wow. Awful.
Here's to Ronnie and Archie and Betty and Jughead and Shoney and Reggie and me.
Next up, we have the icons, Josie and the Pussycats. They are a spin-off in Archie comics. I'd like to thank Graffiti with Punctuation for their great article on the history of Josie and the Pussycats. I've linked that particular article as well as all of my sources in the description down below. So, Dan DeCarlo is the mind behind the band. This is the story of how he came up with Josie. In his early 20s, he was drafted into the US Army. During the Second World War, he drew a weekly military cartoon for the Allies and painted mascots on the noses of airplanes. It was during this time that he met Josette Josie Dumont. She was French, a former model, and she had been set up with DeCarlo on a blind date in Belgium in 1945, just after the Battle of the Bulge. And they had it, whatever it was. It sparked between the two of them despite DeCarlo not speaking French and Dumont not speaking English. They learned, they fell in love. We communicated with drawing, Josie told the Chicago Tribune. He would draw things for me to make me understand what he had in mind. He was really so amusing. Instead of just using words, he would use cartoons to express himself. Right away we knew that we were meant for each other. The war ended and they got married. Had twin boys who would later go on to work for Archie, something. Next minute they're on a cruise in the Caribbean. There was a dress-up party, champagne was bubbling, and Josie, who is now Mrs. Josie DeCarlo, dressed up as a pussycat. The ears, the tail, the whole thing. That's where the first seed of what would become Josie and the Pussycats was planted into DeCarlo's mind. Josie and the Pussycats first appeared in Archie comics in February 1963. According to Tim Hanley, comic book historian, Josie and the Pussycats gets picked up by Archie in 1962. And there's no Pussycats yet. It's Josie, Melody, it's Pepper instead of Valerie. Then with the cartoon, they reconfigure it and bring in Valerie in 1969, which was kind of huge for comics. Archie would bring in some black characters later with Chuck and Nancy, but that was mid-70s. They had Puerto Rican characters they brought in too, like Frankie and Maria, years down the road though. Valerie was quite ahead of that. Even if you look at the mainstream superhero publications at the time, Marvel had Black Panther at this stage, I suppose, but at DC there wasn't a whole lot, so Valerie was huge for representation in comics. As you've seen thus far, we've gotten animal groups and white people in these animated bands, so this is the first time we see a person of color, specifically a black woman, in this space. So the show came out in 1970 and ran for 1 season. Patrice Holloway, the voice for Valerie and daughter of Motown legend Brenda Holloway, sang the theme song.
Josie and the Pussycats, long tails and here's the hats. Guitars and sharps and flats, neat sweet a groovy song, everybody come along.
And she ate down, as we can see. Furthermore, the character of Valerie, if you've ever seen the cartoon, was the smart one in the group. She was reasonable, logical, a mechanical whiz, and really the glue that held everyone together. Playing bass and tambourine, her sheer existence broke boundaries at the time. If you know me or follow me on Twitter, you'll know that I think that representation politics is absolute BS. Until it comes to certain fictional stuff like this. Like, little black kids, black girls especially, could see a black woman being an absolute icon and making music and being a main character. And she was the first ever black character in the main cast of a Saturday morning cartoon. Like, that's major. Tim Hanley also said, they got a lot of pushback for it as well. The TV show more so than the comics. Patrice Holloway sang so good that Valerie was allowed to exist. What an icon. So before the cartoon even aired, Hanna-Barbera held auditions to form the IRL band for Josie and the Pussycats that would do like an album and cross-promotion and stuff. The auditions were in Los Angeles and there were hundreds of girls. Patrice Holloway was obviously there and she sang down, as black women are wont to do, and basically made Valerie happen because she was so talented. Like, wow. Danny Jansen's La La Productions put together the group, and Kathy Doer became Josie, while Sherry Moore became Melody. Even though this should have just been the end of the casting process, racism was, and still is, a thing. Hanna-Barbera wanted their all-white woman band because white supremacy, etc., etc. However, Jansen used his white maleness and music industry clout, he wrote for the Partridge Family, by the way, for good, and said, Holloway stays or he goes. He obviously won the standoff, and the rest is history. The real band released 1 album alongside that 1 season. It was called simply Josie and the Pussycats. Off the album, La La La, If I Had You, peaked at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. They also did a few covers of popular songs. So the original show ended in 1971 and didn't get a new season. But we did get Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space. This show had 16 episodes and ran from 1973 to 1974. In order to get this video out, I haven't watched all the shows I'll mention here, but let me know if you guys would want a video review or like ranking them. Apparently, this show was not as good as the first one and had problematic takes on second wave feminism. They still made music for the show. One of the songs was Love Song of the Universe.
Hear the love song of the universe. It's the magical melody.
The last time an animated Josie and the Pussycats appeared on screen was in a guest spot on a 1973 episode of the new Scooby-Doo movies called The Haunted Showboat. Then, in 2001, we got a live-action movie with Rachel Lee Cook, Tara Reid, and Rosario Dawson as the band. Finally, as is wont to happen to an Archie property in the year of our Lord 2021, we have a live-action Riverdale adaptation. They did do something right by making them all black, but baby, when I tell you I don't trust that show at all. Ashley Murray, Asha Bromfield, and Haley Law play the band this time. Josie also shows up in Katie Keene, which didn't make much noise as far as I can tell and got cancelled after one season. And that's basically where we leave Josie and the Pussycats. Stan Valerie. There were also a bunch of other Hanna-Barbera animated bands like the Chattanooga Cats, the Impossibles, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids, and Jabberjaw. I'm not going that deep into them because I feel like they didn't shift the culture and this video is already going to be long as hell. Here we have a bit of a jump in time with Jem and the Holograms. Jem, the cartoon, was actually created as a marketing ploy for some Hasbro dolls. This time I'd like to especially thank rockgem.com for their incredibly detailed reporting on the history of Jem and the Holograms. Fan sites can be so amazing, y'all. So the idea for the dolls that would kickstart the cultural phenomenon that is Jem and the Holograms would come from Bill Sanders, celebrated advertising executive and art director, Joe Hyland, previous marketing director at Hasbro, and Barbara Hyland, Joe's wife and a writer. Basically, the three came up with a line of rock star dolls. Then, similarly to Transformers, G.I. Joe, and My Little Pony, Hasbro went to Griffin Bacall Advertising New York and Sunbow Productions to promote these dolls. Then, Christy Marks, who had worked with Sunbow before, was hired to develop the show. Hasbro wanted her to make the show appeal to girls and boys, so she put her own touches on the show and made it deeper than just an ad for dolls. Then came the search for Jem's singing voice. Peter Phillips, musician, songwriter, and jingle composer, heard about this search and mentioned it to his then 21-year-old daughter, Britta Phillips. She decided to audition, and they had all the girls record the Jem theme song for their auditions. And Britta was chosen. Not to mention, her audition tape is actually the recording used for the actual show.
Jem is truly outrageous, truly outrageous. Whoa, Jem, the music's contagious, outrageous. Jem is my name, no one else is the same. Jem is my name.
The cartoon first started out as a mini-series of 7-minute segments in 1985, and it was so successful that it was turned into a full-length series. The 22-minute episodes started in 1986. Some of the show's new characters even got turned into dolls. Then the dolls declined in sales, and Hasbro was only really funding this show as a commercial for the dolls, so they lost interest in the project. The final episode of Jem aired in 1988. The show ran for 3 seasons. In 2014, an ill-fated live-action film adaptation was announced. Aubrey Peoples was Jem, Stephanie Scott was Kimber, Haley Kiyoko was Aja, and Aurora Perrineau was Shauna. Critics and fans hated it, and it bombed in the box office. It grossed less than half of its $5 million budget. Then, 2 weeks after it was released, Universal pulled it from theaters. In August 2015, Hasbro Studio had a digital release of an album titled Truly Outrageous, a tribute to Starlight Records, to promote the October release of the live-action film. They never released a soundtrack for the original show, but there were cassettes sold with dolls or playsets. Finally, we have a band that I was very passionate about in middle school. I have the Hot Topic tee that still fits to prove it. Gorillaz was honestly a cultural shift. In 1998, English musician and producer Damon Albarn worked with illustrator Jamie Hewlett to create Gorillaz as a commentary on overly produced pop acts. So Gorillaz took this real-life phenomenon that they noticed to the absolute extreme. According to an interview with Neil Gaiman of all people for Wired in 2005, Hewlett said, "We were flatmates. One day we were home watching MTV with our eyes just kind of glazed, because if you watch MTV for too long it's a bit like hell. There's nothing of substance there. So we got this idea for a cartoon band, something that would be a comment on that." Alvin added, "We're the generation whose stars come from Pop Idol and celebrity wrestling shows, and it's all a bit like a cartoon really." So then after they came up with this concept, Alvin started recording for Gorillaz' self-titled debut album, but first we would get the EP entitled Tomorrow Comes Today, which came out in November of 2000. A lot of the tracks on this EP would end up on the album, and we got our first music video and first look at the animated members with the title track.
Yeah, 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 I'll pay you tomorrow.
As someone familiar with the whole trajectory of Gorillaz, it's so interesting to see how low budget this initial music video is in comparison. Then, Gorillaz' self-titled album would be released in March of 2001. The lead single, Clint Eastwood, featured Del the Funky Homo Sapien. As is a staple of the group by now, the album featured a lot of collaboration with other artists.
I ain't happy, I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag. I'm useless, but not for long, the future is coming on.
This album sold over 7 million copies, making it the most successful album ever made by a virtual band. Then they went on a world tour starting that same March and ending in July of 2002. You might ask, how do you tour an animated band? Well, during this first ever Gorillaz tour, they had the band behind a film screen on which they projected music videos and stuff. Damon Albarn, who voices 2D's singing, was not happy with this arrangement, so that would be the last time a Gorillaz tour was structured like that. Then they released a B-sides album in December of 2001 and a single about 9/11 that same month. Gorillaz performed, aka appeared in 3D animation on 4 screens at the 2002 Brit Awards. They were nominated for 4 awards, but didn't win any. Then in July of 2002, they released a remix album entitled Laika Come Home. And to close out this first era, they released a DVD entitled Phase 1 Celebrity Takedown. This DVD had all of the hereto released Gorillaz visual content along with some extras. Okay, so that is the real-life version of the band's history for Phase 1. Gorillaz eras are divided into phases. This phase is called Celebrity Takedown as per the DVD. I'll go into a very abbreviated version of the fictional history of the band. There are a lot of videos doing a more detailed breakdown, but that's not what this video is about. So, the members of the band are Murdoch Nichols, Stu Pott, aka 2D, Russell Hobbs, and Noodle. Murdoch is the Satanist bassist of the band, 2D is the awkward lead singer, Russell is the possessed drummer, Noodle is the introverted guitarist. So, the fictional start of the band is when Murdoch crashes into Stu Pott's uncle's organ emporium, hits Stu Pott, permanently damages Stu Pott's left eye, and places him in a catatonic state. Murdoch was ordered by a court to take care of Stu Pott and ended up permanently ruining Stu's right eye and reviving him from the coma when Murdoch tried to do card tricks for a group of women. Murdoch loved Stu Pott's new look, recruited him as the band's keyboardist and vocalist, and named him 2D for the 2 dents in his head. Then, Murdoch got Kong Studios, a haunted studio with a shady history. After that, he discovered Russell Hobbs, who had been dealing with possession since childhood, in a Soho record shop. Murdoch kidnapped Russell and brought him to Kong Studios, where Russell was impressed by the music Murdoch and 2D made and chose to stay. Due to Murdoch having sex with 2D's then girlfriend and the band's then guitarist, Gorillaz was down a guitarist, and thus they placed an ad in British music, film, and culture magazine Enemy. That same day, they got a package from Japan that held an amnesiac 8-year-old who did a super impressive guitar riff, followed by a karate kick. She then said the only word in English that she knew, and that would eventually become her name, Noodle. Thus, Gorillaz came to be. After all the real-life shit I talked about earlier, the cops shut down Kong Studios to investigate paranormal activity, and Gorillaz kind of went buck wild before going on hiatus. Thus, we come to Phase 2, Slow Boat to Hades. During this phase, we got my favorite Gorillaz album, Demon Days, in May of 2011. In an interview with MTV, Damon Albarn said, "The whole album kind of tells the story of the night, staying up during the night, but it's also an allegory. It's what we're living in, basically, the world in a state of night." This album debuted at number 1 on the UK album charts and number 6 on the US Billboard 200. It also went 6 times platinum in the UK, double platinum in the US, and triple platinum in Australia. We got iconic singles and music videos from this album, the most famous of which was Feel Good Inc. topped the US Billboard's alternative chart for 8 consecutive weeks. Apple also used the song for an iPod commercial. The second single, Dare, was the first single to go number 1.
You've got to press it on you. You just think it, that's what you do, baby. Hold it down there.
The third single was Dirty Harry. The final single was a double-sided single with Kids with Guns and El Mañana.
Kids with guns, taking over, but it won't be long. I saw that day, lost my mind.
They didn't really have a tour, just a residency at the Manchester Opera House and another one at the Apollo Theater in New York City. They also performed at the 2005 MTV Europe Music Awards and the 48th Annual Grammy Awards. At the Grammys, Feel Good Inc. was nominated for Best Pop Collaboration with Vocals and Record of the Year. It won for Best Pop Collaboration. Side note, the Record of the Year category was stacked that year. Nominated were Feel Good Inc., like I said, We Belong Together by Mariah Carey, Hollaback Girl by Gwen Stefani back when she was in her cultural appropriation bag, Gold Digger by Kanye West, and the winner, Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day. Then, in October of 2006, Rise of the Ogre, the supposedly autobiographical account of the fictional band's history, was released. It's now going for upwards of $200, by the way. 5th grade me was crushed when I couldn't afford it during my first Gorillaz phase. Then the DVD entitled Phase 2 Slow Boat to Hades was released with a bunch of the band's visual content. D-Sides, a B-Sides compilation, was released in November of 2007. And in April of 2009, a documentary called Bananas that chronicled the behind the scenes of the band from 2000 to 2006 was released. Now let's catch up with what's been going on with the fictional band. Tootie went back to Eastbourne, Russell stayed in LA and got the ghost possessing his body banished, Murdoch got thrown in Mexican jail, Noodle went back to Japan and learned about her past, then she wrote Demon Days and brought the band back together to record it. Noodle wanted to take a break from Gorillaz in early 2006 right after filming the El Mañana music video, but halfway through the shoot, the windmill island that Noodle was on was shot down. Thus, we are led to Phase 3, Escape to the Plastic Beach. What would eventually become this phase's album started out as this film/stage concept called Carousel, but Albert and Hewlett pared that down to make the Plastic Beach album. According to a press release about the album, the band have taken up residence, recording on a secret floating island deep in the South Pacific, a plastic beach HQ made up of detritus, debris, and washed up remnants of humanity. This plastic beach is the furthest point from any landmass on Earth, the most deserted spot on the planet. And such is the inspiration behind the album. This album saw the band lean more into electronic pop and expand the amount of collaborators on the album. Plastic Beach debuted at number 2 on the UK Albums Chart and US Billboard 200 chart. This is Gorillaz' best album debut thus far. The lead single for the album was Stylo.
Oh, Stylo, go for blossom in your soul. When you know your heart is light, electric is the love.
Then we got 2 more singles, one of which was On Melancholy Hill.
Up on Melancholy Hill there's a plastic tree. Are you here with me? Just looking out on the day of another dream.
The other single was Rhinestone Eyes. This song even inspired a fan-made, completely animated music video made 7 years after the original song came out.
I'm a scary gargoyle on a tower that you made with plastic power. Your rhinestone eyes are like factories far away.
Then Gorillaz went on the Escape to the Plastic Beach tour, which was the first world tour and the first time that the live band performed in full view of the audience. Alvin said of the tour in an interview with Rolling Stone, "It was incredible fun. I loved doing it, but economically it was an absolute fucking disaster." On November 10th, 2010, they released the non-album single, Donkomatic. While on the North American leg of the tour, Alvin wrote and recorded new Gorillaz songs all on his iPad. This became the album The Fall, and it was released digitally on Christmas Day 2010 and physically on April 19th, 2011. To promote a Gorillaz collection with Converse, Gorillaz released the single Do Ya Thing on February 23rd, 2012. In April 2012, we first got a glimpse into the trouble between Alvin and Hewlett. Alvin told The Guardian that more Gorillaz music was unlikely because he and Hewlett were at odds. In April 2017, Hewlett gave his side of the dispute to The Guardian. He apparently felt like his contributions to Gorillaz kept getting diminished and undervalued, so the two went their different ways. During Phase 3, Murdoch burned down Kong Studios to collect insurance money and moved to get away from the Black Clouds, a group of pirates out to kill him. He then found an island in the middle of the ocean made of landfill stuck together, so he spray painted it pink and used the insurance money to build the new Gorillaz HQ on top. Murdoch named the island Plastic Beach. He used Noodle's DNA to make a violent cyborg version of her called Cyborg Noodle. The Boogeyman gassed and kidnapped 2D and brought him to Plastic Beach, where he was held hostage by Murdoch to make the next album. Russell jumped into the ocean and the pollution turned him into a giant. On a road trip to the Plastic Beach, Murdoch, 2D, and Cyborg Noodle were chased by Bruce Willis, who shot Cyborg Noodle in the head. That was the Stylo MV. In the On Melancholy Hill MV, we learn that Noodle is alive. Yay! Everyone who worked on the album, including collaborators, arrive at the Plastic Beach. Cyborg Noodle is fixed. In Rhinestone Eyes, we find out that the Boogeyman has a grudge against Murdoch due to a deal they made, and the Boogeyman is the fifth rejected horseman of Apocalypse named Flatulence. Also, the Gorillaz live band have been part of the Black Clouds all along. Then there's a firefight between Gorillaz collaborators and the Black Clouds. Russell shows up with Noodle in his mouth. He's a giant, remember? The Boogeyman harvested the soul of a Murdoch imposter that Murdoch hired to replace him on the Plastic Beach, and so the grudge between him and the Boogeyman was over. Thus, we leave Phase 3, Escape to the Plastic Beach. So before we enter Phase 4, We Are Still Humans proper, we have a hiatus. Hewlett told Vulture of the reconciliation in 2017, "We had a conversation at the end of 2014. I went to see Damon play his album, Everyday Robots, and we were at a party afterwards. We'd had a bit to drink, and he said, 'Do you want to do another one?' And I said, 'Do you?' And he said, 'Do you?' And I said, 'Yeah, sure.' I started work on it straight away, learning to draw the characters again. I played around by myself for 8 months while he was performing with Blur in 2015. And thus, the fifth studio album for Gorillaz began to take shape. The concept for the album was a soundtrack for a party for the end of the world if Donald Trump won the election. Because at that time, white people thought that was so crazy a possibility. Co-producer of the album, Anthony Kahn, known as his stage name, The Twilight Tone, set up the album to SOS in 2017. The idea of Donald Trump being president allowed us to create a narrative together. I suggested that the album should be about joy, pain, and urgency. That was to be our state of mind before we even touched a keyboard or an MPC. Especially in American music, dare I say black music, there's a way of communicating joy that at the same time allows you to feel the struggle the person has been through. And the urgency is there because something needs to be done. So that was the mantra. I wanted to blend Damon, a Briton, with the joy and pain and struggle that African American music can express. The first song from the album that was released was Hallelujah Money, which wasn't a single, but it was the song on the album for the imagined inauguration of Donald Trump, and so it was released on his actual inauguration. Humans, the album, was released on April 28, 2017. It debuted at number 2 on the UK album charts and the US Billboard 200. The band toured the album from summer 2017 to early 2018. A deluxe and super deluxe version of the album were released as well. Some criticized the album for having too little Alvin and too many collaborators. During this time, a lot happened with the virtual band. Murdoch was kidnapped by the former publisher of Gorillaz music and only released because he promised to work on new music. Noodle worked as a pearl diver and decapitated Mazu, a shape-shifting devil that spent 500 years trapped in a large pearl at the bottom of the ocean. She then FedExed herself back to Murdoch. Russell became a popular attraction in North Korea due to his gigantic size. He shrunk due to malnutrition and went back to Murdoch. Tootie went to a beach resort for a while before he headed back to England before he was picked up by a driver Murdoch hired. Murdoch decided to host an album release party at the Haunted Spirit House in Detroit. The band's first arrival, where they are haunted by 3 spirits, is the Saturn Bars music video.
Almighty life. I'm in a steaking bar, I got dead, I'm a debaser. Almighty life. Saddened about to my love, and I'm just a heartbreaker. I want to get a taken, 'cause I'm out when I'm staking. And the ring I'm breaking, I'm making you a personal day.
The strobe light MV is 2D and Noodle enjoying the previously mentioned party, Russell sleeping, and Murdoch doing shady business with a man at the bar. In December 2017, Gorillaz released their own magazine called G Magazine. It was 34 pages and had the band's insights on humans, an editorial from each bandmate, and an interview with the band and Hewlett. In February 2018, Gorillaz won the Brit Award for Best British Band. When Murdoch tried to accept the award, he was arrested and taken to HM prison Wormwood Scrubs in London for an undisclosed crime. And we have the end of Phase 4. Then we get Phase 5, No More Unicorns Anymore. Alvin began recording what would become the album for this phase during the Humans tour. At a concert in Seattle on September 30th, 2017, the band debuted Idaho, which would become a song on the new album.
Idaho, Idaho, there's a beauty on the road.
During a break in the Humans tour in February 2018, Alvin finished up the album, which would be called The Now Now. It was released on June 29th, 2018. The Now Now has simple, mostly upbeat songs and 80s new wave influences. The lead single was Humility, featuring George Benson.
I'm a lonely twin that left hand. Reset myself and get back on track. I don't want this isolation.
The rest of the Gorillaz 2018 live dates were billed as the Now Now tour. At a performance in Tokyo on June 22nd, 2018, the band performed the whole album for the first and only time. On December 16th, 2019, there was a one-day theatrical release of the documentary Gorillaz Reject False Icons. Hewlett's son, Denholm, filmed and directed it. The documentary showed the behind-the-scenes of Humans and the Now Now's production and both tours. You can now watch the director's cut on the Gorillaz YouTube channel. As for the animated band, Gorillaz, since Murdoch, hired Ace of the Powerpuff Girls fame to temporarily replace Murdoch while he's in prison. The Humility MV is just the band having fun without Murdoch, really. During the tour, Murdoch starts planning his break from prison. Basically, there was this cute social media campaign where Murdoch and Noodle messaged a fan to coordinate Murdoch's prison break. Eventually, it comes out that Murdoch was arrested for parking fines and he would have gotten out anyway on the day of his escape. Murdoch rejoined the band for the tail end of the tour. Towards the end of 2018, Gorillaz and Casio joined forces to make Gorillaz G-Shock watches. A promotional web series was released to promote the watches. The series was called Mission M101, and it follows all the Gorillaz as they go on an intergalactic adventure and team up with the G-Shock founder Kikuo Ibe to release their line of watches across the galaxy. And that brings us to the current phase, Phase 6, Wish You Were Here. On January 29th, 2020, Gorillaz announced Song Machine, their new project. It marked a new approach to releasing Gorillaz music. Instead of albums and singles, there would be seasons and episodes. This new format saw Gorillaz releasing a new episode each month. 9 episodes comprised the first season. In chronological order, here are the songs. January 31st, 2020, Momentary Bliss featuring Slow Tie and Slaves.
Oh, you know we could do so much better than this. Swimming in pools of momentary bliss, where you gotta buy the bounty, cause everybody take it. Meanwhile you keep on adding, how big you gotta grow.
February 27th, 2020, Désolé featuring Fatoumata Diawara.
Désolé, désolé contre bon. Désolé, I'm a long way from land.
April 9th, 2020, Aries featuring Peter Hook and Georgia.
And it feels like I'm falling in again.
May 2nd, 2020, How Far featuring Tony Allen, rest in peace, and Skepta.
Time to hustle for the money, give a change to your mother. Change them sheets, you got stains on the cover. Better look sharp, now your face on the cover. Like a chameleon, see you changing your colour. Crabs in the barrel wanna hate on each other, so my life gets better, whatever the weather. I dance in the rain and I bathe in the summer.
Side note, Gorillaz announced the Gorillaz Almanac on May 26, 2020. It was a kind of spiritual successor to the G magazine from Phase 4. It was released on December 22nd, 2020 after a couple of delays from COVID. June 9th, 2020, Friday 13th, featuring Octavian.
But if I look into your eyes, I make you realize.
July 20th, 2020, Pac-Man featuring Schoolboy Q.
You can freak me out, you can throw me in the lime pit, you can bow my hands, and tell me I'm not here. I'm a mad Pac-Man, living in a leveled world. Everywhere I go, I don't know where I am.
September 9th, 2020, Strange Times featuring Robert Smith from The Cure.
Spin around the world that night. Spin around in black and white. Spin around until the sun comes up. Strange time to see the light.
October 1st, 2020, The Pink Phantom featuring Elton John and Black.
I tried to get to Atlanta on a peach blossom highway. I tried to put these poses out of mind.
Another side note, from October 19th, 2020 to December 9th, 2020, Gorillaz released a 4-part radio series on Apple Music called Song Machine Radio. Each member hosts their own hour-long episode where they play music, talk to guests, discuss things, and talk with Alvin and Hewlett. November 5th, 2020, The Valley of the Pagans featuring Beck.
Let's go. It feels so good to have a perfect song. It feels so good to be in total control. It feels so good to have a perfect song. It feels so good to be in total control.
The original video had GTA 5 footage, but that allegedly got copyright striked and was re-released without the gameplay footage. December 24th, 2020, The Lost Chord featuring Lee John. That concludes Season 1 of Song Machine. On March 26, 2021, the band hinted at a reissue of their first album and some NFTs for their 20th anniversary. Now, I am not a tech person, but I do know that NFTs are evil and bad for the planet, so this move would go against everything preached in the Plastic Beach album. I know other Gorillaz fans agree with me, but money is one hell of a drug. They also announced a box set called the G Collection that would have 6 of their studio albums excluding The Fall for Record Store Day. Time for our final check-in with the virtual band. During a brief Gorillaz hiatus, Noodle visited Lake Urmia in Iran, and she was struck by how climate change affected the lake. She realized the fleeting state of nature on Earth and sent a postcard to the other Gorillaz at Studio 13. The postcard told them that she wanted to build a machine and see the world before it's gone. The song machine was activated on January 28, 2020. In a statement to Imprint, Russell said, "Song Machine is a whole new way of doing what we do. Gorillaz breaking the mold because the mold got old. World is moving faster than a supercharged particle, so we've got to stay ready to drop. We don't even know who's stepping through the studio next. Song Machine feeds on the unknown, runs on pure chaos, so whatever the hell's coming, we're primed and ready to produce like there's no tomorrow. You know, just in case." The most relevant storyline in the music videos comes from the last chord. The band is back on the Plastic Beach after going through a portal. Murdoch is overcome with guilt after seeing the damaged cyborg Noodle. A sea monster wakes up and destroys the island. Then the deactivated cyborg Noodle opens her eyes as she sinks to the bottom of the ocean. Then a portal back to Kong Studios opened up and the Gorillaz escaped as the island sunk into the ocean. In May 2021, a demonic sinkhole temporarily opened under Kong Studios, so it was inoperable for a few weeks. While this was happening, the Gorillaz went on a road trip in Murdoch's Winnebago with their instruments and recording stuff. And so we're caught up on 20 plus years of Gorillaz history and lore. Let me know if you want more analytical stuff on Gorillaz or in-depth videos on lore or whatnot. I love looking into this stuff. Also, Gorillaz has influenced a bunch of people, from Paramore, the internet, and Odd Future, to The Amazing World of Gumball, Glitch Techs, Teen Titans, and Keeple and the Age of Wonder Beasts, to Borderlands, League of Legends, and so much more. Alvin and the Chipmunks created the blueprint, but Gorillaz popularized it and made it so much more, in my humble opinion. Alright, now we move on to the Hex Girls of Scooby-Doo fame. The Hex Girls first appeared in the October 1999 straight-to-VHS Scooby-Doo movie called Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. According to an article dedicated to the story and impact of the Hex Girls in The Independent, in 1998, writers Rick Kopp and David A. Goodman were approached by Warner Bros. To write a Scooby-Doo animated movie to be released on home video. They wanted something slightly spookier than the Scoobies of the past, with genuine supernatural elements, less overt silliness, and a more polished and grown-up look courtesy of Japanese animators with roots in anime. Kopp said in the interview portion of the article that he was a huge fan of Josie and the Pussycats growing up, which I've talked about earlier in this video, and they were part of the reason why he said the movie needed a girl band. Kopp even came up with the name Hex Girls. They began casting for the movie in early 1999. Eventually we got Jennifer Hale, then best known for voicing Felicia Hardy in the 90s Spider-Man show as Thorn, the lead singer of the Hex Girls, Kimberly Brooks, who was a relative newcomer to voice acting at the time, but now has a filmography full of iconic roles, was Luna, the keyboardist for Hex Girls. Jane Weedland of the Go-Go's became Dusk, the drummer for Hex Girls. The three women not only did the voice acting for the characters, but they also provided the singing vocals. Usually 2 separate people are hired for those roles, but these ladies are multi-talented. The Hex Girls are eco-goths, which was kind of just a buzzword that the actors had to figure out, and it basically means that they're goths that care about Mother Nature. Period, queens. I just want to take a second to appreciate Luna. Following in the footsteps of Josie and the Pussycats, we have a black girl. A black goth at that in the Hex Girls. I love that. A lot of the time the goth aesthetic is seen as something for white people, but I know I at least was shopping it up in Hot Topic, wearing chokers and fishnets. Still do if I'm honest, though less on the Hot Topic. Of course, there is still room for critique about Luna maybe being a token black girl in the group for diversity points, and we could have had another woman of color in the group, black or otherwise, but I still love Luna for what she is, a style icon and a rockin' keyboardist. In their first appearance in the movie Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, the Hex Girls debuted 2 songs, I'm a Hex Girl and Earth, Wind, Fire, and Air, written by Glenn Leopold and produced by Bodie Chandler.
Hex girl, and I'm gonna put a spell on you. I'm gonna put a spell on you. I'm a hex girl, and I'm gonna put a spell on you. Put a spell on you. Earth, wind, fire, and air. We may look bad, but we don't care. We ride the wind, we feel the fire. To love the earth is our one desire. To love the earth is our one desire.
Listen, I can't make the music not bop. Halloween playlist classics. If you want to feel like a bad witch, you put on Hex Girls. I don't know what to tell you. The movie was a hit, as you might imagine, with the Hex Girls on the scene. However, there was a bit of controversy as the Hex Girls were proud Wiccans and believed the religion was a force for good. So we got those conservative parents whining about how the Hex Girls were gonna turn their children into witches, blah blah blah. Despite the controversy, the movie was so popular that Warner Bros. Was talking about giving the Hex Girls a spin-off TV show. The meetings never went anywhere, and for that, Warner Bros., I'm under your bed. Even though the Sapphics never got the Hex Girls show that we deserved, the Hex Girls have popped into Scooby-Doo canon throughout the years. The Hex Girls next came out in another direct-to-video movie that came out in March of 2003 called Scooby-Doo and the Legend of the Vampire. In that movie, we got Hoodoo Voodoo. Iconic. They appeared in a 2003 episode of What's New Scooby-Doo titled The Vampire Strikes Back. They then were on 2 episodes of what is the best Scooby-Doo series to date, in my opinion, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. The first episode they were in was the August 2010 episode titled In Fear of the Phantom. That episode brought back Hex Girl and Earth, Wind, and Fire and Air. We also got the new banger, Trap of Love. That's right, Daphne took a temporary spot in the band and sings this song. It was a good look for her, to be honest. Then the Hex Girls came back in the March 2013 episode titled Dance of the Undead. This episode saw the return of Hoodoo Voodoo and the debut of Good Bad Girls.
Bring it, boy! We're the good bad girls! We're the good bad girls! We're the bad good girls! Don't push till you run out of luck!
The Hex Girls also appeared in the May 2020 movie called Scoop. They had a Hex Girls poster and Hex Girls themed pinball game in the arcade chase sequence. In Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, the Hex Girls have so far appeared in 1 episode from July 2020 titled I Put a Hex on You. That's all of their appearances so far. I actually feel robbed that there are so little Hex Girls in the universe. They deserve their own animated movie. Time for me to campaign. The next band that I'm going to talk about is 1T. If you're thinking, who the fuck is this? You are not alone. This animated band is a French one-hit wonder. Let's get into their story. 1T was created by former radio host, jingle producer, and radio director Eddie Granfier, and music video and TV director Thomas Piet. Granfier was behind the music, and Piet was behind the concept and lyrics. Let's look at that concept. The cartoon characters were created to hide the real guys behind the band. The main character of 1T is 1T himself. He is a 13-year-old boy who does drugs and insults his new age parents. He dreams of becoming a DJ and uniting all the teenagers around the world against the war in Iraq. 9T is a young Latino and 1T's best friend. Fat T is a fat Latino MC. This feels like fat phobia. E is a gifted Japanese computer hacker who lives with his twin sister and never goes outside. EE is E's twin sister whose personality is the complete opposite of E's. I feel some Orientalism. Cool T is 1T's black friend who gets shot in one music video and kicked out of heaven and sent back to Earth. This also feels racially charged. Bull T is 1T's pet dog who was genetically manipulated to never bark loudly or be mean. Claveltino is 1T's enemy and a mobster and TV personality. Acid Man is also 1T's enemy and an inventor and dealer of his own drugs. 1T the band first came on the French scene in July of 2001 with the hit single Music is the 1T Odyssey. That was actually a really fun song, and the French agreed. The single was ranked the 82nd best-selling single in 2001. That doesn't sound really good, but think of it in terms of just how many singles are released in a year. Top 100 is good. Its peak chart position was number 12 and it was certified silver. The next single was Bein' a Star, which came out in November of 2002.
On radio, on TV, girls want a piece of tea. On radio, on TV, you eat, sleep, drink, and tea.
Its peak French chart position was at number 59. Then, in July 2003, we got the next single, The Magic Key.
Music's the Odyssey.
Yeah.
It's here for you, for me. Just listen, find the magic key.
Listen up.
Music's the Odyssey.
Yeah.
It's here for you, for me. Just listen, let your life be free.
Magic Key. This was the biggest hit that 1T would ever have. Its peak chart position in France was number 9. In Germany, it peaked at number 5. It was certified gold in France and Germany. They released their debut album in July of 2003 as well. It was called The 1T Odyssey, and it peaked at number 72 on the French charts. In May of 2004, 1T released the main song for the 2004 movie starring Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson titled Starsky and Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Booty and Munch. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Starsky and Hutch. Whoa, whoa. You can fly, you can try if you can't find something to write.
This song is super reminiscent of 90s R&B and hip-hop to me, like very clearly drawing from black music around that time period. The song peaked at number 16 in France. Their next single was released in November of 2004 entitled Kama Sutra.
Kama Sutra, you've got no chance. I'm athletic, that's just romance. I get my shots, how I forgot what you prefer. Hey, I'm feeling horny, baby, just come and trick me. See how much my desire. See, hot boy, I'm on fire. Wonderland, Kama Sutra. Too late, don't fly to India. Free kiss, boy, just come closer. For I'm your special teacher.
There is a lot to unpack in this song and video, but I'll just do cliff notes. First of all, you'd think early Gwen Stefani would have hopped on this track with the levels of cultural appropriation. Then we have the hypersexualized Asian woman stereotype with EE, and does she have braids? Like, what is happening? This single peaked at number 40 in the charts, and ignoring the problematic nature of the video, we saw a different art style than the 2D-like hand-drawn animation of the other music videos. Then we got another single in 2005 called Hamburguesa. Yeah, there is definitely fat phobia in this. This single was followed by You in November of 2005.
Where would I be now without you? Where would I be now without you? I'm crazy about you, so crazy about you. I'm crazy about you. It's all
last single to date, Tomorrow's War, came out in April of 2006.
Just scroll your window, click the pop-up. Tomorrow's war is lots more traffic. And enough stuff for you pupils, that brain of yours on the stereo. Just scroll your window, click the pop-up. Tomorrow's war, I'll be another brick. And enough blow crazy pupils, funny about our word on your video.
We got 1T's second studio album in early 2006. It was called the 1T's ABC. It did pretty well, but the group has yet to reach the success of the Magic Key. After we got that second album, nothing else has been released and no info about the status of 1T has really been shared. It could be over or just in a really long hiatus. We don't know. The next band we're going to look at is Elite Tauren Chieftain, or EDC for short. Elite Tauren Chieftain started out as a band of Blizzard Entertainment employees that did cover songs. It had Samwise Didier as Samuro the vocalist, Chris Siggety as Signitius the rhythm guitarist, Dave Bergren as Burgess the lead guitarist, Mike Morhaime as Michael the bassist, and Alan Davery as Chief Thunderskins the drummer. The band was tapped to do a fun World of Warcraft inspired song for the credits of the video game Warcraft 3: The Frozen Throne. There wasn't enough time to write a whole new song, so Samwise Didier, member of the band and senior art director at Blizzard, took one of the band's old songs, The Serpent and the Slave, and changed the lyrics to be more Warcraft themed. Thus, Power of the Horde was born.
Storm, black clouds fill the sky. Earth, I hear my battle cry. Fire, thunder will bring forth death from the power of the horde.
That game came out July 1st, 2003. The song is on the fictional album Warcraft 3: The Frozen Throne after the game of the same name. The band has gone through a bunch of names throughout the years. The first band name was 10th Level Tauren Chieftain. Taurens are a race of large cow/bull-like humanoid creatures in the game. Tauren Chieftains are elder Tauren warriors who lead their tribes. Level 10 was the highest level a Tauren Chieftain hero could be in Warcraft 3: Reign of Chaos, and its expansion. For BlizzCon 2005, Blizzard Entertainment's annual gaming convention, they changed the name to Level 60 Elite Tauren Chieftain because Level 60 was then the highest level attainable in World of Warcraft. The band also performed Leroy Jenkins' Paladin of the Horde at BlizzCon 2005, and that performance was recorded and put on the Burning Crusades Behind the Scenes DVD. After World of Warcraft, the Burning Crusade was released in January of 2007 and changed the highest level to 70. The band was known as Level 70 Elite Tauren Chieftain. On July 16, 2007, the band released I Am Murloc.
I am more than a fish. I am more than a man. Death will rise from the tide. I am Murloc. I am king of the sea. But I'm not Aquaman. Death will rise. Hear our cry. I am Murloc.
On August 4th at BlizzCon 2007, Elite Tauren Chieftain performed two new songs, Rogues Do It From Behind and Tearing Up the Night.
Rogues do it in the darkness. Rogues do it where the sun don't shine. Rogues with a little drop of poison. Rogues do it from behind. I'm not Rotosin, not Zergan. No, you know I'm tearing up the night. Tearing up the night.
There is a fictional 2007 album entitled Utter Chaos. At the Worldwide Invitational in Paris on June 29, 2008, the band performed 5 songs, including a new song called Raise Some Hell, which referred to Blizzard's newly announced development of Diablo 3.
Heaven's coming down, big red man in town. My name you know so well. Welcome back to hell.
After each song, the band leveled up twice until they were level 80 Elite Tauren Chieftain. This coincided with the upcoming level cap increase to 80 with World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King. At BlizzCon 2008, they debuted Nightfall.
You cannot defy. In death you will live, and from death you will rise.
At BlizzCon 2009, after the new WoW expansion made the level cap 85, the band became the artists formerly known as Level 80 Elite Tauren Chieftain, in reference to Prince. At BlizzCon 2011, because the artists formerly known as Level 80 Elite Tauren Chieftain wouldn't fit on t-shirts, they changed to Level 90 Elite Tauren Chieftain. In StarCraft 2, part of Blizzard's military sci-fi franchise, their name is Level 800 Elite Tauren Chieftain, in reference to the ever-changing band name. Their fictional album in that game is titled Tearin' Up the Night. In 2014, the band shortened their name to Elite Tauren Chieftain and released We Never Shall Fall. They last played at the BlizzCon 2014 closing ceremony and never since. Apparently the band got busy with work and so Elite Tauren Chieftain fell to the wayside. In the game, ETC performs Power of the Horde every 3 hours on the hour in the World's End Tavern in Shattrath City. Each night at 8 p.m. server time, ETC performs a 5-minute concert in Blackrock Depths, Grim Guzzler. If you have a Dire Brews remote from the Brewfest event, you can trigger a performance by talking to the roadie Ognet Blastbolt. ETC performs on Darkmoon Island during the Darkmoon Fair as well. ETC can also be found at rest in Silvermoon City's Walk of Elders. Now I'm just going to very briefly talk about Vocaloids. I'll go into more depth about this when I do the part 2 of this video that focuses on Asian virtual bands. I bring Vocaloids up because they had a significant impact on, at the very least, American culture. I remember being obsessed with Kaguru Project in middle school. Vocaloids is this software that was first released in 2004 that was a singing voice synthesizer. The different voices would have names and anthropomorphic characters. The most famous Vocaloid is Hatsune Miku. Some Vocaloids have even been projected so they can have live concerts. This phenomenon began in 2004 and has definitely impacted the culture, especially looking at now with the VTubers. Let me know if you want a video on that. The next band up is Dethklok. Dethklok is a fictional band that was the focus of the Adult Swim animated series Metalocalypse. The show premiered on August 6, 2006. The show was created by Brendan Small and Tommy Blacha. According to the show's Wikipedia page, Metalocalypse centers on the larger-than-life melodic death metal band Dethklok, and often portrays dark and macabre content, including such subjects as violence, death, and the drawbacks of fame, with hyperbolic black comedy. The show was widely heralded as both a parody and a pastiche of heavy metal culture. Dethklok's current fictional members are Nathan Explosion on the lead vocals, Squizgar Squigelf on the lead /rhythm guitar and keyboard, Toki Wartooth on the rhythm guitar and keyboard, William Murderface on the bass guitar, and Pickles on the drum, percussion, and vocals. Creator Brendan Small does the actual vocals, guitar, bass guitar, keyboard, and drum machine in the studio for Dethklok. Gene Hoglan does the drums in studio, and Brian Beller has done the studio bass and backing vocals since 2012. Creator Brendan Small also does the lead vocals and guitar for live performances. Mike Keeley does the live guitar and backing vocals, Brian Beller does live bass and backing vocals, Gene Hoglan does live drums, and Pete Griffin did live bass in 2012. Within the show, Dethklok is a super popular and successful death metal band with billions of fans who are willing to do dangerous things to themselves constantly to see the band perform. The extremely dangerous gimmicks that the band employs typically maims or kills their fans. Despite their immense success, the band members of Dethklok are pretty much incompetent when it comes to anything that doesn't involve being a death metal band. The first known fictional Dethklok album is Deathwater, which was intended for only fish to consume. On September 25, 2007, the first official Dethklok album was released to the world. It was called The Death Album. It debuted at number 21 on the Billboard 200, then making it the highest charting death metal album in the history of the Billboard 200. The deluxe edition of the album had the video for the single Blood Recuted. In late 2007, Dethklok went on a promotional tour along with And You Will Know Us by the Trail of Dead. They performed at 12 college campuses with basically all the tickets only being for students. In an interview for Ultimate Guitar, Small described the tour as like the Gorillaz with the animated characters. They also gave out a free EP during the tour along with And You Will Know Us by the Trail of Dead. The EP was called Adult Swim Presents And You'll Know Us by the Trail of Dead on Tour with Dethklok, or the shortened version was Trail of Dead / Dethklok. The EP had songs from both bands. Dethklok also toured in June and early July of 2008 with Chimera and Soylent Green. An electrical fire started during Soylent Green's June 5th set at the Fillmore in San Francisco. Because within the universe of Metalocalypse, Dethklok constantly has dangerous stunts, concert goers were not immediately sure whether to stay or go. Luckily, everyone evacuated in time. On April 7, 2009, Dethklok won the award for Best International Band at the Revolver Golden God Awards. On September 29, 2009, Dethklok released their second studio album, Death Album 2. This album beat the Death Album's previous record as the highest charting death metal album, as Death Album 2 peaked at 15 on the Billboard 200. Bloodlines was the single. October and November of 2009, Dethklok toured with Mastodon, High on Fire, and Converge. On September 4th, 2012, the band released the single I Ejaculate Fire.
I ejaculate fire. A venomous poet can tickle a soul when he kills on the brain. With my death sage, checkmate. Well done for the procreator.
On October 3rd, 2012, The Galaxy was released with its music video. On October 16, 2012, Dethklok released Death Album 3. Death Album 3 peaked at number 10 on the Billboard 200, taking Death Album 2's place as the highest charting death metal album. November and December of 2012, Dethklok toured in North America with Machine Head, All That Remains, and the Black Dahlia Murder. In June of 2013, Dethklok won an Independent Music Award for Best Metal / Hardcore Album. On October 27, 2013, Dethklok released The Doomstar Requiem, a clock opera soundtrack, which is a soundtrack album of the Metalocalypse special of the same name. On October 25, 2014, Dethklok performed at Festival Supreme in LA. In 2015, Metalocalypse was cancelled and not picked up for a final season despite attempts from Small. Dethklok performed at the Adult Swim Festival in 2019. Then, in May of 2021, it was announced that a Metalocalypse film was in production and would be released on HBO Max. And that's all we've got on Dethklok. The last three bands that I will be talking about are all composed of League of Legends characters. The first of which is Pentakill. Pentakill was thought of in 2014 at Riot Games. It follows in the footsteps of elite Tauren Chieftain from Blizzard Entertainment's World of Warcraft. Product manager at Riot Games Veranda Tantula even brought up Alvin and the Chipmunks and Gorillaz as spiritual predecessors to Pentakill. The members of the virtual band are Karthus as the lead singer, Kale as the female vocalist, Mordekaiser as the lead guitarist, Olaf as the drummer, Sana as the keyboardist, and Yorick as the bass guitarist. On June 3, 2014, Pentakill released the album Smite and Ignite, named after the summoner spells of the same name. Then, on August 2nd, 2017, after a 3-year absence, Pentakill came back with a music video for Mortal Reminder of their upcoming album, Grasp of the Undying. Okay, that's super badass. Grasp of the Undying came out on August 4th, 2017. They went on a little tour for the album in 2017, and that's basically the last we've seen of Pentakill besides their performance at the 2021 League of Legends Championship Series mid-season showdown opening ceremony. Here's to hoping they make a comeback with new music and a new music video soon. The next League music group to talk about is my personal favorite, KDA. Now I struggled with whether or not to include KDA in this video or my next one that focuses on Asian virtual music groups because KDA makes a fusion of Western pop and K-pop. Ultimately, I think it belongs here because Riot Games is an American company. The name of the band refers to an in-game LoL term about a player's kills, deaths, and assists. KDA's members are Ari, who is the leader and founder of KDA and a main vocal, Akali, who is the main rapper, Evelyn, who is the other main vocal, and Kaisa, who is the main dancer. Ari is voiced by Laura Post, while her singing voice has been provided by Mian of Idol, Nayeon of Twice, Sana from Twice, Jihyo of Twice, Chaeyoung of Twice, Becca Boom, and Annika Wells. Akli is voiced by Laura Bailey and Trizia Bajos, while her singing voice is provided by Soyeon of Idol. Evelyn is voiced by Mara Juno, while her singing voice has been provided by Madison Beer, B. Miller, and Kim Petras. Kaisa is voiced by Natasha Loring, while her singing voice has been provided by Jaira Burns, Wolf Tyla, Aluna, and Becca Boom. KDA is part of an effort to make Riot a bona fide music label. Also, they were created to promote the League, World Championship, and KDA skins. On November 3rd, 2018, KDA came onto the scene with the hit single, Pop Stars.
Ain't nobody bringing us down, 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 down. They could try, but we're gonna wear the crown. You could go another round, 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 round. Wish you luck, but you're not bringing us down. Go hard, till we get it, we go hard. We so in it, we pop stars. Only winning, winning. Ain't nobody bringing us down, 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 down.
As of recording, the music video has over 452 million views on YouTube. It's crazy popular. Pop Stars peaked at number 1 on the US World Digital Charts and got certified gold. On the same day as the MV release, KDA performed at the 2018 League of Legends World Championship opening ceremony in South Korea, with Mian, Soyeon, Madison Beer, and Jaira Burns. Their performance featured augmented reality versions of the characters alongside the actual singers.
So keep your eyes on me now. 무엇을 보던 좋아할 거야. So let's get it, show you up. Can you feel the rush now?
On May 5th, 2019, Popstars won Best in Games at the 11th Shorty Awards. KDA was supposed to be a one-off or maybe just a couple songs, but the enthusiastic response to the group led to the next project actually being a 5-track EP. So to promote this upcoming EP, Riot did this really amazing social media campaign that is exemplary of how social media and music is tapping into this virtual component. Riot took another one of the LOL champions, Seraphine, who would feature on one of the singles, and gave her social media accounts. They made her into a virtual influencer, kind of like Lil Miquela, whether you love or hate that kind of thing. This started June 26, 2020, and on August 20th, 2020, KDA got their own social media accounts. A week later, KDA released The Baddest.
Coming at you live, real wild. Here to light it up, set the world on fire. Gonna break rules and hearts and tools, 'cause that's what the baddest do.
This single also topped the US World Digital Charts. Then, on October 28th, 2020, they released the next single, More, featuring Seraphine, whose singing voice was provided by Lexi Liu. Once again topped the US World Digital Charts because KDA only puts out bangers. On October 31st, 2020, KDA performed More at the opening ceremony of the World's Final in Shanghai. This time, the performance relied more heavily on augmented reality and the virtual band. This was due partly to COVID restrictions and partly due to the vision of the team. Sadly, the graphics were not as good as the 2018 performance, and fans were a bit disappointed. It wasn't horrendous, but it wasn't what we were expecting from a KDA live comeback. Then on November 6, 2020, KDA released their EP, All Out. The EP peaked at number 5 on the US World Album Charts, and all the songs peaked in the top 10 of the US World Digital Song Sales Chart. In 2020, KDA won Best Visual Idol at the QQ Music Boom Boom Awards. So far, the group hasn't released any new music in 2021, but they have been winning awards. The Baddest won in the Original Song Video Game category at the Hollywood Music and Media Awards. More won Best Original Song at the Game Audio Network Guild Awards, Gold in Best in Video at the 13th Shorty Awards, and in the Video Music Branded category of the 25th Webby Awards. I'm a fan along with so many other people. All signs point to more music to come from KDA, and I, for one, can't wait. Alright, the last band to talk about is True Damage, also from League of Legends. True Damage is Riot's hip-hop group. The name True Damage comes from the LOL term for the damage that ignores physical or magical resistance of the recipient. The group members are Akali, who we'll recognize from KDA, voiced again by Soyeon of Idol, Echo, voiced by rappers Duckworth and Thutmose, Kiana, voiced by Becky G, Senna, voiced by Kiki Palmer, and Yasuo, who is voiced by no one because he just DJs and doesn't speak. I like that in a man. On November 10th, 2019, True Damage made their debut with the song Giants.
We're wide awake now, our eyes are wide open, we're running this world, we're keeping it turning, we're living like giants, yeah giants, we're bigger than giants, we're giants, oh, sleeping giants, sleeping giants, yeah.
The video marks a departure from the 3D animation in Pentakill and KDA videos with True Damage's 2D style. The song peaked at number 15 on the US Rap Digital Song Sales chart. On the same day, True Damage performed with their real-life counterparts at the opening ceremony for the 2019 League of Legends World Championship in Paris.
Yeah, moving too fast for moving in slow-mo. I'm a guy but I actually don't know. When we better put the pride aside, I'm a Benzie on like a Volvo. Yo, that stuff looks like my words. Sitting out to fire and burst. Got the whole crew with me, body don't damage. You know we ain't asking. I ain't gonna set it again, but this is my time. Better look in my eyes. I'm a to the skies in my heart. I don't see. Fall to a blind, we keep this prime. Everybody got a line. Sit back where the stars align. My finesse in my life from the line. Was a diamond in the rough, and now I shine.
The performance was amazing and left people wanting more from True Damage. So far, we haven't gotten any more new music, but I'm hopeful that Riot will invest more into True Damage. And there we go! Those are all the Western animated bands that I found and researched. If I missed some, drop them in the comments down below. Also, tell me which band is your favorite and if you learned of some you hadn't known before. I know I certainly did. Based on this list, there are certain categories of virtual bands that I can think of. The first category is music-centered. These bands are really focused on the music, and any other media is a spin-off from the original music. I would say Alvin and the Chipmunks, considering their origins, the Nutty Squirrels, Gorillaz, 1T, and maybe Vocaloids are in this category. The next category are virtual bands within the context of a show. This includes the Archies, Josie and the Pussycats, Jem and the Holograms, Hex Girls, and Dethklok. These bands are either the focus of their respective shows or just fun characters. Their music offers another way to engage with the world of the show beyond watching it. And the last category are video game bands. This includes Elite Tauren, Chieftain, Pentakill, KDA, and True Damage. These groups serve as advertisements of their respective games as people who aren't necessarily gamers get exposed to characters and lore by the music and the band members. This last category is really interesting to me as it's been ramping up in the past few years and really pushing the industry. It's also cool to me that they've been capitalizing on the globalization of K-pop by including Korean artists in these groups. Riot in particular is super cool because you can hear Korean, English, Spanish, and Chinese in their different songs. I'm really excited for the future of animated bands. Woo! This is a long one to research, write, record, and edit. If you watched all the way through, you're amazing. I'm going to try to think of shorter form videos that won't take me so long to make so I can be more consistent uploading here, so watch out for that. Thanks again. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. I'll have a playlist for all the music linked below, as well as something that has all my sources because there were a lot for this video. Okay, see you when I see you.